Morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. My name is Ishrat Nazmi. I am with Connecticut Apex Accelerator, or CT Apex. We are also formerly known as Connecticut PTAC. Welcome to today's webinar, Navigating CMMC and NIST 800-171 Compliance for PrimesSBLOs. This Apex Accelerator is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the Department of Defense. Matching funds are provided by Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, or DECD. Our host agency is Southeastern Connecticut Enterprise Region, or sector. During this presentation, all attendees are muted and your questions will be answered after the end of this webinar. The session material will be emailed to you after the presentations. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so be sure to submit your questions in the Q&A box. Connecticut Apex provides educational resource and training to simplify the complexities of government contracting for our clients. We offer assistance with federal, state, and local government registrations and certifications, including various socioeconomic certifications at both the federal and state level. Connecticut Apex provides support to clients in the following areas: market research with procurement histories, identifying bid opportunities, preparing bid proposal, one-on-one personalized counseling, creating government-friendly capability statement, and bid matching service at no cost. CT Apex has 6 office locations throughout Connecticut, which includes East Hartford, Rocky Hill, Milford, Bridgeport, Stamford, and our headquarters in Groton, Connecticut. Connect with us at CT Apex on social media platforms, including Facebook and LinkedIn. In addition to registering online at ctptag.org, where you can sign up for government contracting assistance and also access our learning library for various webinars on a variety of topics in regards to government contracting. We are delighted to welcome you to a specialized webinar tailored exclusively for prime contractor small business liaison officers. This session is dedicated to exploring critical insights into cybersecurity maturity model, or CMMC compliance, a pivotal aspect of navigating the intricate landscape of government contracting. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Kareem A. Sykes, Project Spectrum's program managers, will guide us through the intricate nuance of CMMC compliance and its direct relevance to prime contracting and SBLOs, drawing on extensive experience in cybersecurity awareness initiatives. I'm thrilled to welcome Mr. Kareem A. Sykes. He's currently the program manager for Project Spectrum, a U.S. Department of Defense recognized cybersecurity awareness initiatives that offers resource, training, tools toward increasing cybersecurity awareness and hygiene for small business in particular. Mr. Sykes provides strategic leadership for a dynamic team of cybersecurity and outreach professionals whose collective aim centers around providing the educational resource, tools, small business and institutions need to develop, implement, and maintain cybersecurity compliance. He oversees and directs the daily execution of multiple projects within the large-scale programs and assures that the initiatives adheres to government regulatory guidance. Mr. Sykes also manages contractual requirements to assure that Project Spectrum meets the cost, scheduling, performance goals required by the Department of Defense Office of Small Business. So without further ado, let's extend a warm virtual welcome to Mr. Kareem Sykes.
Very good, and thank you so very much, Israt, and the amazing team at the Connecticut Apex Accelerator. I thank all of you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and really, to talk about what has got to be perhaps the most germane subject matter as it relates to not only a barrier for small business, for small businesses looking to do business with the defense industrial base writ large, but certainly a topic that has resonance across really the three critical sectors, as we always like to focus on as it relates to the defense industrial base, right? And that is the knowledge-based services, research and development, as well as the manufacturing sector, right? That operational technology aspect. And so what Project Spectrum is intently and keenly focused on as it relates to those areas is the provisioning of training tools and resources such that small businesses can become not only habitually cyber compliant from a hygiene perspective, but really that they can meet the compliance requirements that are coming down the pike as it relates to, for example, the proposed rule that was just issued for CMMC by DoD CIO there on the 26th of December. And so my colleague will actually post that in the chat, a video that was actually published. Some of you all may be familiar with it. I want to say on the 7th of February, DoD put out a video kind of walking you through all of the nuances that were released there on 26 December. So hopefully you'll have that there in the chat. And what I would say is, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see here. All right, so we'll jump right in here, and hopefully you all can see this just fine. I want to just talk a little bit about first kind of what's the outset, what's the goal here, and that is in large measure we're talking about educating businesses on the landscape of cybersecurity threats. We are certainly providing an overview on federal regulations for safeguarding data and information directly commensurate with CMMC requirement thresholds. The briefing businesses on the CMMC process, or the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification process, talking about the supplier performance risk system scores, self-attestation, and the like, and providing an overview on how Project Spectrum can help with the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification journey, right? And it really is a journey. So again, part of it is, education awareness. Then there's the provisioning of actual training and tools based on what we have there. Okay. All right. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat if everyone can see my screen here. It looks like I'd lost a screen there. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. So again, that's just the overview. Again, educating the businesses, providing that overview in federal regulations. Again, talking about the CMMC process and all things appertaining. And then, of course, providing an overview on Project Spectrum insofar as how it is that we can help with the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification compliance journey there. So a little bit about kind of the threat landscape here. So we're talking about some 43% of all cyber attacks targeting small and medium-sized companies. Only 28% of those have plans in place to be able to mitigate those attacks, right? Or the effects of those attacks, shall we say. About 3/4 of those breaches are caused by human error, which speaks again to this idea of education and awareness, as well as training, a training component there, all of which Project Spectrum's resources speak to. And then, of course, the cost of a cyber attack, right? Crippling, as much as $653,000 for a single attack on a small and medium-sized company. So, and again, just 14% of SMBs have the proper insurance coverage to cover cyber attacks. And insurance is another big aspect of what companies should certainly be looking at, particularly small businesses, because we know that they have those particular threat vectors aimed at them because of those potential vulnerability areas, whether it be, again, financial constraints, resource constraints to allocate towards things like cybersecurity protection. And so as we talk about intellectual property, access to government information, interconnection with larger defense contractors, access to the supply chain, political and ideological motivation, all of which are reasons why small and medium-sized businesses are targeted. And so no shortage of impetus there, obviously, in terms of why it is that we want to make sure that not only are companies aware of the particular threat vectors that are targeted towards them as SMBs, but certainly of the resources that avail themselves to not only mitigate, but hopefully in many cases prevent altogether. And so as we talk about federal contract information, understanding sort of the distinction, if you will, between FCI and CUI, and it hasn't always been entirely clear, admittedly, but what we have to go with is the FAR Clause 52.204-21, where in no uncertain terms, it talks about the FCI, again, being sensitive but unclassified, obviously, but that information that's either provided by or generated for the government under a contract. And so in that regard, federal contract information is a subset of controlled unclassified information. And so as we talk about controlled unclassified information, in accordance with DFARS 252.204-7012, which was due to be mandated there for NIST 800-171 by December of 2017, December 31st to be exact. CUI is that broad category of sensitive information, while unclassified as well, but requiring safeguarding and dissemination security controls pursuant to federal laws, regulations, and policies. And so what we've done there on the right-hand side, up top, you'll see some examples of federal contract information. In the lower right, you'll see some examples of CUI. And that first bullet, proprietary business information, is when that information is in the hands of the government, that becomes controlled and classified information. But again, you can see some examples, and this becomes very, very critical, understanding what FCI is and what CUI is, so that as companies are coming into projectspectrum.io, which is our main portal, it's how they get access to the resources that we provide at no cost, I might add, and we'll talk more about that as well. But it's how they get access to the resources, and from the point at which they register with us, there is a myriad of resources that are available, not the least of which is training. And so we'll talk more about that. And specifically on foreign ownership, control, and influence, we provide an actual training course that speaks to that. Again, it's this idea that while the government has certainly encouraged foreign investment in some cases for small businesses where it makes sense, absolutely there have to be right and left delimiters. So that, as you see in that third bullet there, when we talk about the NDAA for FY23 calling out in Section 875, this idea of establishing a program that demonstrates commercial due diligence tools and techniques and processes. It's this idea that we help small businesses identify those malicious attempts by foreign actors to gain undue access or foreign control or influence over the business. And so one of the things that you'll see is sort of a recurring theme throughout Project Spectrum and some of the resource provisioning that we're providing is that there's this idea of, again, identifying, evaluating, and reducing risks, right? And so that's certainly true here as it relates to foreign ownership, control, and influence. And so, again, that's a critical piece of this. We know that, again, 50% of all espionage in the U.S., for example, manufacturing sector, again, one of the critical areas there, is due to some sort of foreign ownership, control, and influence. And so operational technology in that manufacturing realm becomes absolutely critical. Project Spectrum has done work considerably with the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, which is a public-private partnership that we'll talk a little bit more about as well, working with both the national MEP as well as some of the MEPs around the country, again, as they're on the front lines, essentially helping those small businesses understand, helping those small manufacturers in particular understand, again, those particular threat vectors. And so we're certainly involved and tapped in with those that are doing incredible work there for small manufacturing. And so as we talk about the CMMC model, what we know in no uncertain terms is that we're talking about 3 distinct levels of compliance here for CMMC. CMMC level 1, again, considered the foundational level. As you can see, that's what we're talking about, FCI only, right? So federal contract information only, right? CMMC level 2, that's where we're talking more about the advanced level. And that's where we're talking about either a prioritized or non-prioritized acquisition level there in terms of data that's being handled. At level 2, again, we're talking about controlled and classified information, either at the prioritized or non-prioritized data acquisition level. And we'll talk a little bit more granular on that. Level 3 is where we're considering the high capacity and safeguarding CUI data, again, the expert level, if you will, the highest priority programs within DoD. You can think of it that way. And you can see there the model and the respective practices, as well as the assessments that attend for those respective levels. And again, we'll talk a little bit more granular there. The most important point here is that at level 1, again, we're not talking about a certification being issued. Why? Because self-attestation suffices. We'll get into that a little bit more. But what the DoD essentially has said in layman's terms is at level 1, because of the FCI and it not being critical to national security in and of itself, that because it's at that level, that self-assessments suffice. And that's an area where Project Spectrum speaks directly to that, in that we offer not only the scoping assessments from DoD so that you can discern what is in and out of bounds as it relates to your particular level of compliance journey, but it's also that we offer those self-assessments so that you can essentially practice, get an understanding of what it is that your company infrastructure looks like and or does not look like. And therefore, you have some information from which to then be able to move to getting training appertaining to those areas that you may be missing as it relates to the self-assessment. And so, again, that's where... Oh, I'm sorry.
I wanted to interject and let the audience know that we are putting a survey regarding the level, which level of CMMC that they're currently in. It's very important for us to understand and to see where some of our prime contractors are with their level, certifications on CMMC. So we'd really appreciate filling out the survey. And we'll revisit the data at the end of this presentation. Go ahead, continue, Kareem.
Well, that's fantastic. Yes, always important to know exactly where folks stand. And to that point, what we know is more than 60% of those companies that are pursuing CMMC are pursuing levels 1 and 2. And so we find, again, that's where a lot of the focal point is. I'm just going to minimize that, but that's fantastic. Please chime in as to what level of compliance you're either pursuing or you have completed. Certainly very, very important and critical here. I'm going to go to the next slide. We go a little bit more granular. For example, on CMMC level 1, this is where we find, by and large, most people are pursuing for compliance, right? And it makes sense because you're starting out the journey. If you're only handling federal contract data, that's something that Project Spectrum is going to be able to help you discern, right? As you engage with us, if you don't already know that, we're going to be able to help you do that. Why? One of the reasons is we want to make sure that you're not wasting time, that is on pursuing, for example, a certain level of compliance that may or may not speak to your particular compliance journey, right? So if you're pursuing contracts that are only handling federal contract information, well, then we want to look at level 1 as being the focal point. And in level 1, we know, again, as I mentioned, that self-assessments suffice. That is, if you are uploading, if you are meeting the compliance requirement there, you upload that you're met or NA status there to the supplier performance risk system, that checks the box for having met level 1 compliance, right? Again, conducting those self-assessments essentially negates the fact of a CMMC certification at level 1, right? There's no certification that's required or issued because you're able to self-attest, and hopefully that's really clear. So organizations can register with Project Spectrum, again, at no cost to conduct those assessments and produce those attending scores. For level 2, considerably different, right? So at level 2, we're talking about what? Number 1, we're talking about controlled unclassified information, right? We're talking about controlled unclassified information at either what DoD is going to designate as either a prioritized or non-prioritized data acquisition, right? And so in the case of a non-prioritized acquisition, self-assessments or self-attestation suffices, right? So similarly, in level 1, where again, there's no CMMC certification issued for that level, but rather that you have to just self-attest and upload your information there to the supplier performance risk system, right? Well, In split A here, in a non-prioritized acquisition at CMMC level 2, right? We're talking about CUI, self-attestation suffices. And this is huge because, again, you don't have to meet with a C3PAO or a certified third-party assessor organization. We'll talk about that more in split B. But in split A, you can self-attest, right? So you can leverage the resources on Project Spectrum. You can take the self-assessment, right? You can upload that into the supplier performance risk system, or your attending data, not the actual assessment itself, but the scores associated and so forth. You can upload that into the supplier performance risk system in this particular case, because we're talking about a non-prioritized acquisition at CMMC level 2. But again, the cost savings is there, right? Because you're not having to pay a third-party certifier, right, to come in and certify your company at CMMC level 2 for a non-prioritized acquisition. I want to be very specific about that. And so CMMC certification is not required or issued at this point. Scores are still uploaded, as in the case of level 1s. In this case, for non-prioritized acquisitions at level 2, scores are uploaded into the supplier performance risk system. And I want to highlight that we at Project Spectrum have a blog that speaks exactly to how to do this, right? All the particulars. So if you need guidance on that, that's one of the resources. We have a blog, as well as many other blogs that are very, very informative on our site that speak to exactly how to do that in the case, again, of a non-prioritized acquisition at CMMC level 2. Well, let's shift gears then and talk about a split B here, which is a prioritized acquisition or sensitive CUI data acquisition. Again, a distinction that DoD will make either in the RFP itself or the solicitation. It's going to delineate whether whether it's a prioritized acquisition at level 2 or a non-prioritized acquisition. But we're now talking about prioritized acquisitions at CMMC level 2. Okay, so in this case, if it is in fact deemed that, then you will in fact have to meet with what's called a certified third-party assessor organization, or C3PAO, as you may have heard. You can find these on the Cyber Accreditation Body's website, the cyberab.org. I believe there's about just over 50 that are actually certified at this point as certified third-party assessors. And so you can see in their marketplace tab on the cyberab.org site, you'll be able to see that listing of C3PAO should you in fact be dealing with CUI at a level to which you would have to ultimately receive CMMC certification and therefore be assessed by a certified third-party assessor. Again, there's still the financial savings there because you're still leveraging those self-assessments as you would be in the case of a non-prioritized acquisition or at level 1 even. So you're still leveraging those self-assessments that Project Spectrum has on the site so that you can be very clear about, okay, what is the standard? What is the universe of what I need to meet for level 2 compliance, right? All 110 controls. What is it that I need to meet? Where is it that I'm at in the context of what I need to meet, right? In other words, what areas of opportunity, what gaps do I have? That self-assessment is going to tell you that, right? And then when you're ready to pursue, or rather upload your assessment, in the case of a prioritized acquisition, you're going to upload that to the Enterprise Mission Assurance Support Services System, otherwise referred to as EMASS. That's EMASS. Again, Enterprise Mission Assurance Support Services System. That's where you're going to upload your results from your self-assessment there in the case of a prioritized acquisition at CMMC level 2. Again, a triennial every 3-year cycle assessment that's done there. And so hopefully that gives you a really, really clear idea about CMMC level 2, either at a prioritized or non-prioritized acquisition and the attending protocol there. At level 3 for CMMC, we're talking about a triennial every 3-year assessment. And what we actually gleaned at level 3, by the way, is we were able to learn on 26 December when the proposed rule was issued by DoD CIO, was that we have now the scoping guidance at level 3. We had been missing that. The DoD had not issued that until 26 December. So we now have that information. We'll be uploading that to our site as well very soon, just as we have, for example, the scoping guidance for the self-assessments for levels 1 and 2. So we have those existing on our site right now. Level 3 will be there shortly. And in the case of CMMC level 3, we talked about that being, again, the highest priority programs for CMMC. and for the DIB. And so as a result, those assessments are handled by the government, DCMA's DIB-CAC, as it were, or the Defense Industrial Base Cyber Assessment Center would be conducting those assessments on a triennial basis. And so I just wanted to walk through kind of what a compliance scenario looks like here. Again, we're talking about level 1, but I want to give an idea of how it would work. So if you're coming into Project Spectrum as a new company and you're saying, well, how do I get the greatest utility? How do I sort of formulate my cyber compliance journey? And where do I start? Well, one of the first things here in step 1 is really understanding and being able to select the appropriate CMMC level, right? What is your intended level of compliance, right? And that could seem like a loaded question if you're a novice and just starting out at this. You know, and that's why we have, one of the things I'll talk about here shortly is the fact that we have cyber advisement, a team at the ready. Those cyber advisors are ready to engage and answer questions, again, at absolutely no cost. So not only do you have access to the self-assessments, the scoping assessments, the myriad of educational resources, be it online training or some of our more CMMC control-specific training courses, more of the bite-sized courses. We call them micro lessons. Not only do you have access to all of that, but you have access to the latest and greatest in terms of news that's being published by our cyber advisement team in concert with our communications folks. But you also have that ability to be able to engage with them one-on-one to help you understand what that appropriate CMMC level is going to be for your company, right? We already talked about 2 of the main factors, again, being, are you handling FCI or are you handling CUI, right? That's going to be the main differentiator in terms of what level of compliance you're going to be pursuing. But in step 2, we're going to move past that and say, okay, well, what then is the scoping assessment? What is inbound? What questions are appertaining to me from a scoping perspective so that we, again, focus on the areas that we most need to hit, right? So we look at that DoD scoping assessment for the respective level of compliance that we've identified. And then at step 3 here in the green, we're looking at conducting the actual self-assessment. And this is critical, right? This is what's going to tell us, okay, again, where are we in the context of where we need to be in terms of controls that we need to be meeting? From step 3, we're going to move then to step 4 and perform some gap analysis, right? So you as a small business coming into the environment, you're going to be able to know, having now taken that self-assessment for that respective level of compliance, that what are the gaps there? Where am I falling short? And therefore, what then do I need to do in terms of developing at step 5 or a remediation plan, right? How do I begin to position myself to remedy those areas that I've fallen short on? And then at step 6, again, actually implementing those security controls. So again, having developed that remediation plan, what then am I now ready to implement, and how do I go about doing that? And then in step 7, we're talking about preparing documentation and evidence, which is absolutely critical, right? So you're going to need to be able to show how you're meeting these controls, not only in the case of an audit, obviously, but really to make sure that you have that for your own benefit. So you know, okay, what am I meeting? How am I meeting it? And how do I know? How can I prove it, right? Where's the evidence of it? And then finally, being able, in the case of level 1, being able to upload that self-assessment detailing from the score there, or rather, being able to show that you've met that CMMC level 1. Again, there really is no score at level 1. It's really, have you met or not met the requirement? A lot different at level 2, right? And so at level 1, again, a little more granular, we talk about federal contract information versus controlled unclassified information, again, being so critical so that informs what level of compliance we're going to be pursuing. And of course, what training appertaining that we need to be able to address whatever we've been able to glean from the self-assessment and the gap analysis. And so again, this gives you an idea of what the self-assessment scoping assessment is going to look like. Now, the scoping assessment for CMMC level 1 is going to focus on, again, federal contract information assets, right? It's going to focus on those 6 control families or family domains, as we refer to them. It's going to be about 51 questions, okay, at level 1, all right? And so as we talk about the scoping for CMMC level 2 in comparison, that's going to cover obviously considerably more because there's more controls to meet, right? We're talking about 110 controls at CMMC level 2 that have to be met, right? So in that case, we're looking at 14 family control families or family domains over the course of some 69 questions. And in the case of level 2, unlike level 1, you must produce a system security plan, right? Which again is a way of laying out how does your company's handling information, how's it moving, how's it being stored, how are you transmitting it, right? What are the protocols in place for how you're meeting the respective controls, right? And so that system security plan becomes critical at level 2. And that, by the way, we have a course on Project Spectrum that speaks to the fundamentals of, what does that system security plan entail? What does it look like? And so if you're not familiar with that, that course is going to be extremely helpful for you. And then again, plans of action and milestones. We know that at level 1, plan of action milestones are not allowed, right? So it's really at level 2 that we begin to get into plans of action and milestones. Again, even then, there's parameters around, for the highest level, the plan of action milestones being reserved for those highest level requirements, right? We talk about, again, conducting the level 1 assessment. Again, either a MET or NA status, right? Again, it's adhering to the FAR clause 52.204-21, as well as NIST 800-171A, right? Again, you can inherit practice objectives from an external service provider, 6 control families, and 17 practices at level 1. And what you see on the right is what you would see if you were actually taking the actual self-assessment, right? So the biggest box there that you see with the 2 red circles on it, that's a screenshot of the actual self-assessment, in this case for level 1. And then if you hover over that tab that says tooltip, you're going to get kind of a brief tip there, in this case, about, controls, who can use company computers, who can log on to the company network, again, setting up your system so that unauthorized users and devices cannot get on the company network. So it gives you just a little tool tip there. And then to the right of that is an explainer video. So again, what we said was, there's a lot of people coming into this and they're very, very foggy on what any of this even means. And so what we wanted to do, even at the most rudimentary levels, is, be able to have things in place like explainer videos, like tooltips, so that you could actually understand exactly what's being asked of you in this way, in the explainer video, in sort of a little animated sort of vignette style way, right? Where it sort of explains it very, very clearly, very briefly, as you can see, just a 3.5-minute video there. That gap analysis we talked about is absolutely critical. Again, the idea being that the scoring methodology, again, is used to produce an assessment score. Businesses use the findings report that can be produced through Project Spectrum, again, to begin their gap analysis. That is helping to actually identify those control results, right? Identify control gaps, identifying those that report in either a not met or no status, right? Again, reviewing Project Spectrum's micro lessons. Those are those, as I mentioned before, those CMMC, if you will, core control specific trainings, right? So smaller in length, but again, really targeted towards those core controls that, for example, you may have discovered that you have some issues with, okay? And so we align those gaps with CMMC level requirements. And so again, we talk about the remediation plan. This is just a visual of it and sort of what it seeks to do. Again, identifying and prioritizing gaps, conducting that risk assessment, being able to set clear objectives and action items, again, determining the resources, establishing realistic timelines, documenting the remediation efforts, right? These are all critical things that are going to be critical components, rather, of your security compliance journey, right? And so what you see on the far right there is a screenshot of some of those micro lessons courses that I talked about. So whether it's authorized access control, transaction and functional control, external connections, again, giving you an idea of what those micro lessons are targeting, again, specifically derived and targeted to, rather, those areas that have been unveiled as areas of opportunity, as I like to call them, from the self-assessment. And so you see this sort of coalescence of the resources that Project Spectrum's provisioning, where we're not only helping you identify the areas that you need help with, but we're actually providing tooling to actually speak directly to how it is that you remedy those areas that you've identified. Implementing security controls a little more here. I think we've talked a good bit about this, but again, this idea of being able to help those businesses understand the assessment guides, leverage the self-assessments on Project Spectrum, help with planning and preparation, again, selecting those gap security controls. And then what you see again on the right is just screenshots of what we're offering there to help you on that in that regard. again, collecting evidence, updating documentation, plans, policies, processes, procedures, right? It's what we do. It's what we want to help you with. Continuous monitoring on current posture is absolutely critical. And then as we talk about the preparation of documentation and evidence, and this right here is very, very critical, okay? One of the things that Project Spectrum is doing at no cost when we talk about cyber advisory services is you're able to not only field questions with our cyber advisory team. Now, let me caveat this when say that it is the absolute expectation that companies are going to be able to engage and leverage the resource that we have on the site to be able to really lean forward and really be able to do a lot of the gap analysis on their own. That's how the site was intended to be created, right? That's how the resources are there. But having said that, we know invariably that you're going to have questions. We know that there's going to be some gray areas. We know that there's going to be some nebulous areas for people that are just now getting familiar with this, right? And understanding what's required. And so knowing that, what we did is we said, you know what, we want to have some experts at the ready, people who are certified, people who understand compliance, people who understand not only cybersecurity from the sort of hands-on vulnerability assessments, right? SOC analysts, network operations center type of hands-on experience, but we wanted to fuse that with an understanding of the compliance and the policy, right? Because that's a lot of what CMMC and NIST is really dictating here, right? And it's how do we navigate that? How do we make this quagmire, what can seem like a quagmire of DFARS and FAR regulation? How do we synthesize that in a way that's palatable to small and medium-sized businesses? Well, part of how we do that is we make accessible cyber advisors with whom you can engage and field those questions off of, right? So whether it's your network topology, right? You see that screenshot there to the far right, whether it's a system security plan development, whether it's incident response plans, Project Spectrum is at the ready to be able to assist small businesses with all of this, right? At absolutely no cost. So now, are we going to write your system security plan? No way. Are we going to create your incident response plan in its entirety? No. Are we going to develop a network topology for you? No. But what we are going to do is we're going to help you understand what that looks like. We're going to give you the tooling to be able to do that for yourself, right? We're going to give you the training to understand everything that needs to happen with regard to those things that you need to put in place, right? And so, but the benefit of that is that you're able to talk with a cyber advisor, again, at no cost, and understand and get advice on how it is that you should even proceed with these things. And that in and of itself is of immense value. And so as we talk about, again, uploading the results to the supplier performance risk system in the case of CMMC level 1, or in the case of CMMC level 2 at a non-prioritized acquisition level, where you're going to upload that score to the supplier performance risk system. What you see on the screen is a blog that we have published, or screenshot rather, of the blog that we have published on our site that, again, in no uncertain terms, walks you through exactly what to do with that. So accessing that procurement integrated enterprise environment, and that supply performance risk system, which is housed within there, that repository for DoD. Again, helping you understand everything that entails. We've thought about that. And what else have we thought about? Well, in addition to the myriad of resources, so whether it's the self-assessment toolkit, whether it's the cyber readiness dashboard, and that is where if you've, for example, viewed blogs on the site, maybe you've looked at a white paper, maybe you've looked at a particular news article, maybe you were in the middle of a self-assessment and you stepped away from the portal and you come back to log back in, that cyber readiness dashboard is going to be able, is an area of the site where we've developed it so that you can bookmark areas of the site, can capture everything that you were maybe engaged with in a particular setting, and you'll be able to access that subsequent when you return. And so that's a nice feature there. Not only is that helpful there, but it's also helpful in the context of the self-assessments, wherein you're able to see that progression of effort. So from one score to the next, again, you can take the self-assessment multiple times. You can take multiple levels of self-assessment, right? And you can begin to sort of compare and rack and stack. Where did I fall when I first came into Project Spectrum and I took that self-assessment after having looked at that scoping assessment, right? Where did my score fall initially? And then having taken the training, having read the blogs, having engaged with the cyber advisement team, having looked at the micro courses, right? Having having engaged in these resources and having taken that self-assessment subsequently, how did I improve? Where are those margins of improvement? You can see that all in that dashboard. So it's hugely, I think, beneficial in that regard. We talk about, again, some of the templates, the plans of action and milestones, coursework that we've done, again, teaching all about what that entails. The system security plan course, teaching all about what that entails. Again, not just throwing templates at you, but actually helping you understand what these instruments, if you will, how the efficacy of them and how they factor into the cyber compliance journey writ large is, again, I think that contextual relevance that I think is hugely and hugely impactful and hugely beneficial. The blogs, the newsletters, the briefings, what we're doing on a pretty regular cadence is we're having trainings just like this, right? But even separate trainings where it's more specifically talking all about CMMC and the levels. We have webinars that we've done in the past on those. We're going to be beefing those up even more as we go forward, in addition to augment some of the in-person activity that we're doing. For example, I am slated to be at the Small Business Bootcamp training that's going to happen with the Special Operations Command down at their Softworks facility down in Tampa, Florida. That's going to happen towards the latter part of March. So I'm excited about that. But we're doing events like that all around the country, engaging with small businesses like yourselves, even large primes. I know we have some large primes here as well, because we know that those flow down clauses ultimately are going to be things that the primes are going to be held responsible for, right? So we know that those subcontractor flow down clauses are there. And so we want to help primes as well, and small business liaison officers as well, understand exactly what those requirements are going to look like, and have you drive those small businesses to our site for this no-cost provisioning of what is immensely valuable resources. And so how can you connect with Project Spectrum? Well, you can do that in a myriad of ways. I talked about some of the training webinars. We also, from time to time, have what we call cyber circuit events, which we're in the process of reinvigorating. That's where we bring in industry professionals from within and around the defense industrial base to really share best practices, understand those subject matter appertaining specifically to those small and medium-sized businesses from a cybersecurity perspective, obviously. Looking at what we can leverage both from the private sector as well as from within the federal government, be it military services and so forth. For example, we've collaborated with the NSA Collaboration Center, Cyber Collaboration Center there. Their chief, Morgan Adamski, who's done some fantastic work there. Some of the free resource provisioning that they talk about, again, protective domain name services, some of these no-cost resources that can have a huge impact in terms of helping small businesses thwart some of the attacks that are being launched at them very intently and very aggressively. And so you can reach us through some of those cyber circuit events, training webinars. The main way that we want to drive everyone to, that is projectspectrum.io. That's where you're going to start your journey with us. We're going to collect some information up front about your company, whether it's your NAICS codes, your UEI, some basic information, cage code, things like that about your company that we can keep track of, just for the purposes of, again, of knowing who we're engaging with and how we can improve our offering over time. And then, of course, outreach at projectspectrum.io is going to be the email if you want to reach us there. That email box is actually triaged into a number of other boxes. But everything from, if you want us to if you want to invite us to an event for speaking engagement, you can get us there. Or if you have questions about the site, maybe a training course you took, you have a question about that, you can do it through there as well. One of the things that a lot of people reach out to us from, and this is jogs my memory to talk about this, and that is the Mentor Protege pilot, cybersecurity pilot program that Project Spectrum facilitates. That's a 2-year program through the DoD, through the DoD Mentor Protege program, which you can think of that as the umbrella program, where they're working intently on all things appertaining to how it is that it can help small businesses leverage that mentor and really glean some valuable things from that mentor through that program, hands-on. But if you're in that DoD Mentor Protege program, you are eligible for what we call the Cybersecurity Pilot Program. And that is the piece that Project Spectrum facilitates. And that's where we work with those companies throughout a 2-year period. Again, hand in glove, not only helping them understand and use the self-assessments, but taking from that information really and helping them work with things, for example, like a compliance training plan, where we actually document kind of forward steps based on information that we've been able to glean from working with their company over that period of time, hand in glove, and really more granular one-on-one, if you will. And so that's another way that companies can reach out to us. Again, outreach@projectspectrum.io is our main email. Social media, obviously Twitter, LinkedIn, and even a YouTube channel we have with some animated sort of vignette style videos as well for consumption. Again, we want to be able to leverage as many outlets, if you will, as possible to engage with small businesses. We're working with small business development centers. We're working with the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes as part of our partnership with DoD. We're working with the NVDA and a number of other folks where there's a small business concern. All of the military services we've connected with in some way, shape, or form or another, vis-a-vis either through the cybersecurity pilot program or just other initiatives that we've been invited out to be able to speak all around the country about what Project Spectrum is provisioning at no cost for small businesses. And so again, happy to field some questions to that. Again, I thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, Kareem. That was very informative as always. We always welcome this the interactive session we have. The key takeaway for me is that we have a better understanding of Project Spectrum. IO offers tons of resource and assessment tools. I want to address that here at Connecticut Apex, we provide basic guidance and understanding of the DoD's CMMC compliance requirements. So if you have any questions, you can also directly contact us. And also we provide assistance with government contracting programs, such as the DoD's mentor protege programs. And also emphasize that both of our organizations, Connecticut Apex and Project Spectrums, offer all of these services at no cost. I want to make sure that people understand we are a value-added resource here to help anyone who needs assistance with government contracting and CMMC. So,
yeah, it certainly bears worth repeating, is right. I think you're spot on there. The fact that you can engage with not only the level of resources that we're providing, because there are other providers that post things on their site about self-assessments and different things like that. But really where the rubber meets the road is what small businesses don't need is a bunch of sort of a litany of information plastered out there, right? What they need is targeted resources that speak specifically to what is going to be required of them so that they can do business with the DoD and be successful, right? Handling the information properly and in a way that's conducive to not only the success of those with internally to their company, but with those with whom they would invariably be engaging with, be it large primes, be it other subcontractors within the DIB, right? So that we can secure our supply chain and ultimately secure the warfighter, frankly, in the end, right? And those products that we produce for the warfighter. So again, I think absolutely spot on in the fact that these are no-cost resources. We really have to heighten and foot stomp that because to be able to sit down and talk with somebody or virtually talk with someone about your specific compliance journey, about your specific company, your specific industry, right? At absolutely no cost is, I think, just invaluable, right? I don't know of anyone else that's doing that. That would come at a cost of many thousands of dollars, probably, right? To be able to have those types of exchanges. And because of the partnership with DoD OSBP, right, consistent with the small business strategy that was issued in January of last year, right, talking about this unified management approach, talking about helping to beef up the resources that we're providing for small businesses. Again, reducing barriers to entry for small businesses that want to do business with DoD, right? Well, cybersecurity is a huge and critical piece of that. And that's really where we're really in lock and step to say that, and that third objective, that cybersecurity resources, that outreach, right, being able to get these resources in the hands of companies that need it the most, that is exactly what we're doing at Project Spectrum. And we are, for that matter, intently committed with the Apex accelerators to get that messaging out.
Absolutely. So the Apex Accelerator provides assistance with government contracting, being informed about cybersecurity threat landscape, and understanding the CMMC compliance is essential for success in the government marketplace. As a contractor, as a prime contractor, as a small to mid-sized business. So it's very important to understand those, and we can't stress enough that we're all here to assist you, find resource and tools. I do see a couple of questions in the chat box. So for the first question is, can large prime contractors search SPRS by company name, UEI, cage code, and view our suppliers' SPARS scores and related documents? They are uploaded in the demonstrating their level of compliance. So I think I want to address that. CT Apex, we provide assistance with helping you upload your SPARS score, understand you how to navigate through SPARS. So definitely reach out to us. And so, Kareem, if you have anything to add, you can definitely go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. And again, that blog, I would encourage you to certainly check out that blog that we've written. It really covers, I think, the gambit in terms of what all things that pertaining to uploading that score. As to whether a large prime can actually access that, assuming they're obviously not the company that's uploading that. I do not know that, honestly. That's a good question. We can take that for action and see, can't we find out a good answer to that. As I understand it, it is available to the company that's actually uploading, their actual information pertaining to their self-assessment. So I don't know about that, but that's one that I will certainly take for further research. Mark, if you can grab that one, we'll certainly do that.
Thank you so much for answering that question. It is valuable for primes to understand whether they can see the level of some of the subcontractors' compliance. So it's definitely, let us know when you do find out, because as we also provide the support to our primes and small to mid-sized business with the SPARS score, with navigating the SPARS database. So it would be helpful for us to also understand that information.
Yeah,
so,
what I'm sorry, just one dovetail in there is one dovetail there, and that is, really there should be, though, a very, very sort of synergistic and close relationship in general, obviously between a sub-tier contractor and the large prime, but specifically as it relates to CMMC, given the significance of it and given the fact that ultimately the prime is going to be held accountable, right? And so in terms of what their subs are meeting as it relates to CMMC. So in that regard, I would say even if a prime, for example, does not maybe have access to being able to go in there, and it may be for privacy concerns or other things, the sub-tier contractor with whom would be responsible for uploading that information to SPURS should certainly be sharing that information, right? And I would even say that it be required by a large prime to be able to see actual documentation of having met those respective requirements. And so I think that sort of synergistic and close relationship is all the more important as it relates to between prime and sub, as it relates to CMMC requirements.
So I guess at the end, I want to say that Kareem, we really value and appreciate you participating and engaging with us and coming on to answer all of these questions, providing this valuable resource for our audience every time you do come. And we hope to see you more. We will see you, several times and perform, participate in our on our webinars. So with that, I'd like to just conclude this presentation today. Thank you everyone again for joining today for this exciting and informative webinars with the Connecticut Apex Accelerators. And for any further questions you have regards to this topic, you can directly contact us. Don't miss out Connecticut Apex's upcoming webinars by visiting the Connecticut Apex calendar page to sign up for all of our upcoming events and workshops. Please visit the ctapex.org. I'm sorry, ctptech.org, and follow us on social media. So everyone have a wonderful day, and thank you again for your time today.